Ba 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 da ba 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 da ba. Ba 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 ba. All right. Yeah. Good morning, and welcome to yet another episode of Red Stone Lapis Lazuli. It is I, your host, Pogokido. Let us begin. Likely it'll crash, so let's see what happens. Nothing. Oh, there we go. Okay, now I'm going to see if it's going to crash when I click on the window. Back to the game at hand. Hey, it didn't crash. It didn't crash. Nice. All right. This is good omens. Let's see. It looks good. It looks like it's going. Yeah, dudes. All right. Hey. So, welcome to the Minecraft world. You can see I created a ring of new trees around my base, around part of it at least. And I think it's pretty cool. It breaks up the plains. So yeah, hey, and I'm chilling out here. Also, what I've done is I started trying to collect materials because like all my materials are kind of haphazardly scattered everywhere, and I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna go ahead and make an item sorter for all my mined materials and start a proper base here, a proper base. So I'm gonna dig this out, space out. I'm gonna dig out more. I need to dig out more. And create an item sorter for the materials that I mine down below. I'll have a drop-off station down below. It'll come up it'll launch everything up here, and it'll go into the item sorter. So if I need something, I'll just come down and grab it. Yeah, I might even change this janky system. But that comes in the future. In the future. And here's the funny thing. Let me tell you a story, alright? So, I decided, I don't know if it was from nostalgia or what. I decided to try out World of Warcraft. Again. I decided to try it out, and let me share with you my experience. So, I used to have a max level character, but when I load in, I find out there was a stat squish, and everyone's stuff was squished. So when I stopped playing, I was at the tippity top. But after the squish, oh, my levels are lower, my gear is lower, everything's lower. And now relative to the max, I'm only about midway. So it would take me time to go through all the content again to get to the current quote expansion. So they offer for one character something called a gear boost. You get a boost up to the current content for one character, and I'm like, great. So I try to do it, and while I'm in the game, logged in to everything, it tells me, oh, you have to be logged in to do this. And I tried looking up on the internet any solutions, and there were like none. There were none. So that's a bummer. I see all my old characters, but I can't access them. Okay. Then I here, just keep digging, right? Then I keep I make a new character and I go through like the new leveling content. You get through the first 10 levels like much more quickly than you did in the past. And then it dumps you off, which is kind of cool if you've never gone through the flavor yourself, I guess, like the first time. But if you've done it before, you don't want to have to take the long route again and hear the story again. And so it offers you a way to like skip it, basically, and drops you to level 10 in Stormwind, like the main capital city. And then that's when I kind of realized how old the game was. Like the graphics were terrible. Like I've been playing Minecraft for years, and Minecraft is not known as a graphically intensive game, and yet this feels way more modern than anything in World of Warcraft. It looks like it's a dated ass old game. The textures for Stormwind, well, because, and here's the reason, it's because light is flat. In that world, light is flat. There's no gradation to the lighting. It's like the lighting's not even there. Yeah, it's like the light's not even there. You see how, like, in Minecraft, like my shadows I have shadows from multiple angles, from multiple light sources that actually like fall upon the surface. So you have like these unusual shadows. Like none of that in World of Warcraft. The light is just flat. It makes no impact on the world. It's like it's not even there. So it's interesting to me that they haven't updated the graphics really at all. So I was like, man, what am I doing? What have I gotten myself into again? Yeah, and then I'm like, I don't know. Maybe it was a mistake. It was definitely a mistake to try it again. It was a mistake. Anyways, that's personal stuff, right? And you're like, we don't care. That has no relevance to us. Sorry. Just thought I'd let you know. Don't go back to the world of Warcraft. It's not the same anymore. Or no, instead it is the same. And you've changed, whoever, have changed a great deal since then. So, okay. So yeah, that's what I'm doing, right? I'm just preparing a space for the item sorter. And really creative, talented people take the time to add mods that they should then share with the rest of us to do amazing things. Like, I wonder if they could ever implement this inside World of Warcraft, this kind of light interaction. Because it would be super easy in, well, I wouldn't say super easy, because you would have, the magic effects would be dynamic. Like, you can, everything else is static light, but the player themselves, they can cast magic and light up an area, which doesn't actually work. Or it doesn't actually, like right now, it doesn't actually light up the area. It doesn't do anything. It's like it's not even there. I don't know. That just seems the way light interacts with is really important for immersion, I think. All right. So that's personal stuff. World of Warcraft it feels super dated. And I wonder if, yeah, it feels dated. It feels old. Like no reasonable person would start playing that game if they've never played it before. Oh, that's how I figured it out. You know what it's like? It's like playing Dwarf Fortress. The mechanics, like some of the ideas are great, but the mechanics of it are just so bad. Like the UI is so bad. The user interface, yeah, it's so bad. It's so dated and old. I just don't know. Okay. So going on in the real world, like we're about a month out. It's the 6th. Yeah, we're about a month out from the 2024 U.S. presidential elections. Some states have already started voting. They're already doing their thing. So we're underway, in other words. Now, let's see. Now, some would say, no, it's pretty common knowledge. Donald Trump is going to try to overthrow the election again. On the first day, or on the first night of the election, he's going to declare victory, no matter what. It doesn't matter what if they haven't finished counting the votes. It doesn't matter if he's projected to lose. It doesn't matter if the station's already called it for Harris. It doesn't matter. He's going to declare victory. He's going to say, "I won," no matter what. See, we should make this out of what kind of... It's an item sorter. Who cares? It doesn't matter. I like diorite, but I don't have very much. Or andesite, I mean. I like andesite. Oh yeah, I got enough. Let's make this out of polished andesite. Yeah. Get some slabs. Okay. So Donald Trump is going to declare victory because that's part of why. Because that's part of his plan. His plan is to take power. He's not interested in democracy. He's interested in taking power. But you know what? It's going to be hard for me to explain it right now. How about I have this Yale law student, or not student? Maybe she's a graduate. She's a grad. She graduated from Yale Law School. So it's in her training to explain it better than me about this crime.
Meryl Streep asked VP Kamala Harris the elephant in the room question the other day. She said, "I think you're going to win in November. But what happens if he meaning DJT, and the officials refuse to accept and certify the results?" And honestly, more people should be talking about this. And I know at first this seems like a wonky, out there question, but it really isn't. Our system is very complex. And as you know, it's not just the majority who decides who wins, but there's a lot of moving parts to selecting a president. I went to Yale Law School where I focused in constitutional law, specifically the Electoral College. And DJT has hired a team of very smart and tricky lawyers and understand the legal ins and outs of this process and are already mounting a ground game to do just that, refuse to certify. They don't teach this in schools, but it's critically important, so I'll explain it to you as simply as possible because you need to understand how this works. Okay, so a bit of background. There are 538 electors. To win, you need 270. In each state, this group of electors is called a slate. Really, they're just a bunch of individuals like you and me. Now, here's where the tricky part comes in. In order to win these electors, the results have to be certified. It's not a given that someone just wins. Certification is necessary, and that's basically just saying, hey, this was a free and fair contest, and everything has been counted. But local and county officials, the people responsible for certifying these results, can essentially just go rogue. Their defense for this would be that there was fraud on some level. And this isn't just some crazy legal theory, this is happening. A recent Rolling Stone article found that there are at least 70 officials in key swing states that are 2020 deniers with a history of pro-DJT radical conspiracies. They support the big lie, and make no mistake about it, as Mark Elias, one of the main lawyers for the VP Harris team, put it, and I quote, "I think we are going to see mass refusals to certify in November." Republicans are counting on not just that they can disrupt in big counties, they are counting on the fact that if they don't certify in several small counties, you cannot certify these statewide results. So what does that mean in practice? Take Georgia, for example, where the state board has been captured by DJT loyalists. If there are enough local and county officials that say, hey, we think that the Democrats pulled some funny business here, and we're not going to certify these results because of it, in a lot of cases, the board can and won't certify. And if there's enough of them, that might prevent the Secretary of State from being able to certify as well. And certainly the Democrats will sue, but it's going to be a challenge. And here's the thing. If neither DJT or Kamala reaches 270 or gets a majority, it becomes a contingent. Dario, what's a contingent? It's what happens under the 12th Amendment. The guiding rule is if neither gets a majority, then it goes to the House of Representatives. And the Republicans control the House, so then they get to pick the president. And then the Senate gets to pick the vice president. This actually happened once before in 1824. Andrew Jackson won the majority. The race was split between 4, so nobody got the full 270. And it went to the House, and instead they picked John Quincy Adams to be president. All of this is very real. And to quote Mark Elias again, the other side is more ruthless, more organized, and more prepared. DJT has already told his supporters, you don't even have to come out in November. DJT and large members of the GOP are banking on this, and they have the machine to do it.
Yeah. That's it. That's the plan. They're going to, no matter what happens, no. In Republican election deniers have taken positions of authority in many parts of the country related to elections. So essentially what happens is if Donald Trump does not win the county, then they will or the state, they will refuse to certify the election. They don't need evidence, they don't need proof, they don't need anything. To them, it's already determined that Donald Trump would be the leader. So if it's anything other than that, they'll refuse to certify the vote. If enough counties and states do this so that no candidate can get more than 270 votes, electoral college votes, then the whole thing will be, and there's a deadline for this. It's not just like rah rah rah. There's a deadline. You have to do it by this date. If you don't, then if by this date no one has over 270 electoral college votes and the vote has not been certified, I mean the reason that's why they wouldn't have 271 electoral college votes, because they didn't certify the vote. But if you have 207, if you can't get to 271 electoral college votes, then the election is not chosen by the people, it's moved to the House of Representatives. And it's not just the members who get to vote on it. Instead, it's the legislatures of the states. Each state legislature is given one vote. It doesn't matter how many people live in your state. Everyone gets the same vote. That means California, with 28 million people, gets the same number of votes as like Montana or North Dakota or something, with like 500,000 people. Like a fraction of the people gets the same vote as a whole bunch of other people. So it's not fair. So, but what has happened is, what that means is, the state legislatures are not evenly distributed. A lot of the states with hardly any people in it are controlled by Republicans. So that means, and there's a lot of states with hardly any people in it. So that means, even though there's less people who are being represented, Republicans have more state houses, which means they would have more power to pick the president. So they're gonna pick Donald Trump over the will of the people. That's one way. Another way they can do it is if someone sues, it's gonna go to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court will decide it, just like they did in 2000. In 2000, the election between Al Gore and W. Bush came down to Florida, and they had a problem with their voting system in Florida because they used cards that you punched a hole through. That's how they you didn't mark it, you punched a hole through it. Well, sometimes the hole would not be aligned, so it was not clear where who you voted for. It wasn't exactly clear. And then sometimes the hole would not get punched all the way through, and there would be a hanging piece of paper that would be stuck on there. They call that a chad, a hanging chad, a chad. So this chad would be on the ballot, and then when the machine got to the ballot, the chad would mess up the vote counting, and the vote would be rejected. What are you doing here? Where'd you go, man? Anyways, so that meant that there was like a lot of errors in the counting of the votes. So they had to recount all the votes by hand, which takes a lot of time. And the Supreme Court, like, somehow it got in the hands of the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said Florida has to finish their recount by this date, and if it doesn't, then it's going to come back to us and we'll decide it. So Florida is sitting there recounting their ballots and their stuff, and they would like find votes for Gore like that were hidden away that someone didn't deliver, and like all sorts of stuff. So now they're on the Miami-Dade, Florida, Miami-Dade County in Florida, and it's projected that that county will flip the state of Florida over to Gore, and then Gore would be president. That was the projection. And so what happened was the evil minion Roger Stone got a bunch of politician like helpers, like anyways, and then they went and they attacked the office in Miami-Dade County that was counting the votes. They attacked it. And they attacked it so that the people counting the votes would be afraid and run away and not count the votes. If they don't count the votes, then the election gets kicked to the Supreme Court. And so that's what he did. Roger Stone got a bunch of dudes. Tom Pyle, who worked in the office of Majority Whip Tom DeLay, a Republican. There was Gary Malfrus, Majority Chief Counsel. Rory Cooper, National GOP Congressional Committee. Kevin Smith, former House GOP Conference Analyst. Stephen Brody, former aide to Senator Fred Thompson. Matt Schlapp, Bush campaign staff. Roger Morse, aide to Rep. Van Hillary in Rep of Tennessee, Republican Tennessee. Dwayne Gibson, aide to Chairman Don Young, Republican Alaska. Chuck Royal, assistant to Rep. Demint, Republican South Carolina. Lena McConkey, former assistant to Rep. Jim Ross Lightfoot, Republican, Iowa. So all these Republican staffers show up at the behest of Roger Stone to threaten violence on the vote counters, to make them run away. The Republicans did it. Like this is what happened, right? And then the vote went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court ruled for W. Bush. And then W. Bush would lead us into Afghanistan and Iraq. And we'd have 9/11 because of him. And we have Guantanamo Bay because of him. And we have the torture memos because of him. George W. Bush's administration justified the use of torture. They wrote a memo justifying the use of torture. They called it enhanced interrogation techniques. The corpo speak. It's not torture, it's enhanced interrogation. So, yeah, it was pretty shitty. But that's not all, right? That's not all. Because the big news that should have like destroyed Donald Trump if he were a normal candidate, but he's not. He's a fascist dictator. Wannabe. So the thing came out. So the Supreme Court ordered Jack Smith. Jack Smith is the special prosecutor prosecuting Donald Trump for his role in the January 6th attempted insurrection. Donald Trump had argued that he cannot be criminally prosecuted because he was president of the United States, and therefore he has immunity. He has criminal immunity. So this be like, well, you know, everyone's like, this is a ridiculous. Hey, what's up, Fizzy HB Contortion? So everyone thought this is a ridiculous argument. What do you mean president is immune from the law? That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard of. Well, it goes to the Supreme Court, and since Donald Trump picked the Supreme Court, the Supreme Court agrees with Donald Trump and says, yes, the president is immune from the law. But then they say only for official acts, and the only one that can determine what is an official act is the Supreme Court. So the Supreme Court ordered Jack Smith to say, you have to say why Donald Trump committed a crime, and to do that you have to distinguish between which of his acts were official acts of the president and which were not the official acts of the president. But we didn't tell you what official acts were, so ha ha ha. Anyways, so Jack Smith is like, fine. and he writes this long ass report and gives it to the judge and says, all right, judge, this is why the United States is still going to prosecute Donald Trump. We're going to show why his actions were not official acts of the president. And so to do that, he has to explain, well, what the hell's going on? So But if you everyone saw what the hell was going on, then that would compromise a lot of the case that Jack Smith has. So he filed it under seal, which meant it can only come out if the judge says it's okay with these redactions. So, and it takes time to go over the redactions. But like this past week, that report was finally released, the redacted report. The first page pretty much lays it out, right? The first page. So the defendant, Donald Trump, asserts that he is immune from prosecution because he claims it entailed official conduct. Like, he says that what he did was okay because he did it as a president and presidents are immune. But we're going to show that his scheme was a private one with a team of private co-conspirators who acted as, where the candidate acted as a candidate when he pursued multiple criminal means to disrupt, through fraud and deceit, the government function by which votes are counted and collected, a function in which the defendant, as president, had no official role. So this whole thing is going to say, all right, Donald Trump is a criminal because Donald Trump did these things, and he did them not as a president, but as a private individual. So if it's not done as being a if it's not done as being a president, then it's not immune, and therefore he can be prosecuted. Now, Jack Smith isn't doing this because he wants to get at Donald Trump right before the election. No, this is what happens because the Supreme Court took so long to decide this case. It was like the last thing they did. And they even took us an extra week to do it. It was the last thing they did. Gore versus Bush, that was done in like less than a week to decide who's president. But to decide if the president is immune from the law, that took them like a year. It was ridiculous. So it's only coming out now because the Supreme Court took it so long in doing it. Anyways, the defendant's private criminal conduct sets forth the legal framework created by Trump for resolving immunity claims, applies that framework to establish that none of the defendant's charged conduct is immunized because it either was unofficial or any presumptive immunity is rebutted. The defendant must stand trial for his private crimes as would any other citizen. So, Donald... So yeah, then it goes through a list of all the stuff that Donald Trump did. It's like 100 and something pages for it. There's just so many pages. The defendant and his co-conspirators are also demonstrated their deliberate disregard for the truth and thus their knowledge of falsity. So that means like they knew that they were that it was not real. They knew that they were lying. It wasn't like they made a mistake. They knew. When they repeatedly changed the numbers in their baseless fraud allegation from day to day. At trial, the government will introduce several instances of this pattern, in which the defendant and conspirators' lies were proved by the fact that they made up the figures from whole cloth. One example concerns the defendants and conspirators' claims about non-citizens voters in Arizona. The conspirators started with the allegation that 36,000 non-citizens voted in Arizona. 5 days later, it was, quote, beyond credulity that a few 100,000 didn't vote. 100,000. So it changed from 36,000 to a few 100,000. 3 weeks later, the bare minimum was 40 or 50,000. The reality, about 250,000. Days after that, the assertion was 32,000. And ultimately, the conspirators landed back where they started, at 36,000. A false figure that they never verified or corroborated. In other words, they just made shit up. And you know they made shit up because they kept changing the numbers over time until they all agreed on one number and they stuck to it. But they never had any proof because they just made it up. They just made it up. Donald Trump just made it up. So remember how I told you the thing that Donald Trump is going to do is try to attack the offices where they count the votes, to stop them from counting the votes. They'll either do it with the courts or they'll do it with a mob if they have to. Remember that? So then they did it in Florida. Remember that? Well, what happened in 2020? The same thing. The same thing. In the immediate post-election period, while the defendant claimed fraud without proof, his private operatives sought to create chaos rather than seek clarity at polling places where states were continuing to tabulate votes. For example, on November 4th, Person 5, a campaign employee, agent, and co-conspirator of the defendant, tried to sow confusion when the ongoing vote count at the TCF Center in Detroit, Michigan looked unfavorable for the defendant. There, when a colleague at the TCF Center told person number 5, "We think a batch of votes is heavily in Biden's favor," is right. Person number 5 responded, "Find a reason it isn't. Give me options to file litigation. And even if it is, when the colleague suggested that there was about to be unrest reminiscent of the Brooks Brothers riot, the one I just showed you, a violent effort to stop the vote count in Florida after the 2000 presidential election, Person 5 responded, "Make them riot. Do it." The defendant's campaign operatives and supporters used similar tactics at other tabulation centers, including in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and the defendant sometimes used the resulting confrontations to falsely claim. Well, anyways. So, you can see, I will show you, like, that Donald Trump and the Republicans are doing the same fucking thing they did the last time. The same thing. They're doing the same thing. They're gonna try to stop the vote counts. They're gonna try to stop the votes from being counted. When they are counted, they're gonna challenge them in court, or they're gonna refuse to certify the election because they no longer ascribe to the Constitution. They have abandoned it. Now, you can see this because Trump supporters will hear all of this information and say the United States is not valid. They'll say the United States has no legitimacy to lay these claims of criminal conduct upon Donald Trump. They place full authority in Donald Trump and none in the United States. So there's no way he could have committed crimes, according to a Trump supporter. The United States is incorrect. And then when you ask them, well then who do you believe? In 2018, 17 intelligence agencies, American intelligence agencies, concluded that Russia had interfered in the American election in 2016 in order to get Donald Trump elected. 17 intelligence committees said this. Later, the bipartisan Senate Select Committee would also agree that this is what happened. And then Robert Mueller, in his investigation, agrees that this is what happened. That the Russians interfered in the 2016 elections with the purpose of getting Donald Trump elected. And they have hundreds of contacts of Trump campaign staff meeting with Russian officials, Russian agents, in order to get this done. So, who do you believe? Do you believe the Americans or Vladimir Putin denies all of this? Vladimir Putin says, no, that never happened. You Americans are crazy. We never did it. That's crazy. So who do you believe? Do you believe the Americans or do you believe Vladimir Putin? All Trump supporters believe Vladimir Putin against the United States. All of them. They will all do it. And why? Because they have to. If they accept that Russia helped Donald Trump take power in the United States, that means they're not free. That means Donald Trump is beholden to Vladimir Putin. That would mean Donald Trump is beholden to Vladimir Putin. That he's not, that the president has to bow down to Vladimir Putin. That's what that would mean. That means that would mean that they support the candidate that Vladimir Putin supports. And they cannot believe it. They cannot believe it. They cannot believe it. They will agree with Russia at the same time as they say they don't agree with Russia. That they're not on the same team. But that's the deal, right? So it's the same idea with this report. Jack Smith is laying it all out. These are serious allegations. This is a big deal. This should have ended Donald Trump's career. It should have ended it. But I don't know. There's a lot of corruption. This is from the New York Times. This is the 147 Republicans who voted to overturn the election results. You know, what I needed to do was read. I'm gonna go grab a clip from Heather Richardson. She really breaks down this thing way better than what I'm doing. I'm awful. Look at me. Listen to this. No one's gonna listen to me, dude. I'm just blabbering. Yeah, why is no one listening to you, man? This is such a huge thing. Man, this is such a big thing. Alright, here we go. I'm gonna go into a safe place. Safe place. Alright, what does this say? But Vance's willingness to lie... Oh, wait a minute. But Vance's willingness to lie matters to Trump and nowhere more than his refusal to acknowledge that Trump lost the 2020 presidential election. Vance has repeatedly said he would have done what Vice President Mike Pence would not. Go along with Trump's attempt to overturn the results of the 2020 presidential election, urging the states to approve alternative slates of electors than the ones that accurately reflected the choice voters made at the polls. Let's be clear, former Representative Liz Cheney responded. This is illegal and unconstitutional. The American people have voted. The courts have ruled. The Electoral College had met and voted. The governor in every state has certified the results and sent a legal slate of electors to Congress to be counted. The vice president has no constitutional authority to tell states to submit alternate slates of electors because his candidate lost. That is tyranny. Vance's stance was poorly timed. This afternoon, Judge Tanya Chutkan released the government's motion for immunity determination. Special counsel Jack Smith's legal filing, laying out the government case against Trump for his attempted overturn of the 2020 presidential election. The filings pull from previously unreleased interviews, calls, and messages to paint a damning picture of Trump's behavior as he tried to steal the presidency. Names in it are redacted, but journalists have already figured them out. The filing is coming now because Trump and then Supreme Court repeatedly delayed the case. After the Supreme Court decided that presidents are immune from prosecution for crimes committed as a part of their presidential official acts, the court had to take on what constituted an official act. In today's filing, Smith argued that where Trump was acting as an office seeker, not office holder, no immunity attaches. The government asks that the court determine that the defendant must stand trial for his private crimes as would any other citizen. The facts of the case begin with the damning statement. When the defendant lost the 2020 presidential election, he resorted to crimes to try to stay in office. Fundamental to these crimes was disinformation. The entire plan was for keeping Trump in office depended on Trump and his loyalists lying to the American people, convincing them of a completely false story that the 2020 presidential election had been stolen. That effort started long before the actual election, when it became clear to the Trump team that he was unlikely to win. They knew, though, that since Democrats were more likely than Republicans to use mail-in ballots, there would be an initial period when his numbers were higher than Democratic nominees Joe Biden's. We're shoving right off again. In that case, Trump told advisor Roger Stone, his chief of staff, Mark Meadows, and Vice President Mike Pence's chief of staff, Mark Short, he would simply declare before all ballots had been counted that he had won. In the meantime, so that's what he's going to try to do again. Donald Trump is going to declare victory, no matter what. On October 31, he said Steve Bannon said that Trump was going to declare victory. And that's what he did. He claimed there had been fraud. When the vote count in Detroit was swung toward Biden, he said, give me options to file litigation. He's like, do it, make them riot, do it. So, anyways, man... Donald Trump is going to try to delay the election, and it'll be interesting to see how many Republicans go along with him. But look at all these Republicans, these Congress people, who voted to overthrow the election. There's a shit ton, dude. There's more than can fit on my screen. Look at all these people. They voted to overthrow the election. And they're gonna do it again. Like I was scared shitless when January 6th happened. They're gonna do it again. They're gonna do the same thing. I don't know if they're going to storm the Capitol. That'll probably fail. But they're going to storm instead the counting offices in towns all over the country in order to stop the states from certifying their vote and stop the vote from getting to 270 electoral college votes so that it gets kicked to the state legislature or the Supreme Court. Both of which the Republicans control. Not because they represent more people, but because of the structure of our government. So it's undemocratic. What they're doing is undemocratic. All right, let's go through some slides, right?
Ask you, given you're a member of Congress, as we look ahead to the next election, your role is critical in certifying the results of the election. And I just want to ask you, can you commit to a peaceful transfer of power after every state has certified its election results?
Well, Pam, I mean, a couple of things there to unpack that question. One, it makes no sense except for a political motivation that Jack Smith and the judge unsealed this before.
Okay, so the question is, can you commit to certifying the election once the states have certified them and sent them to you? Can you commit to it? And he's saying, well, there's this Donald Trump is under indictment, and the prosecutor under the by the Supreme Court, who delayed for so long, happened to release this report. So he's not even talking. He's like, how does Donald Trump's report of crime report have to do with certifying the election? What do these two have in common? Can you certify the election? It sounds like he's not saying he can, and he's saying the reason why he cannot certify the election is because Donald Trump is a criminal, is under indictment. Is that right? Right? The question is, can you certify the vote? And he's like, no, because Donald Trump is under criminal indictment. So
before the Trump campaign even had a chance to respond, they were given to mid-October to respond. Number two, the reason he's filing a superseding indictment is that the Supreme Court ruled that the official acts did not allow this into the realm of criminal activity.
Okay, so can you certify the election? After the states have done other things, can you certify the election? And he's like, no, because Donald Trump is under criminal indictment. He's got to prove his innocence. He's got to like fight this court case. Right? He can't do it. He cannot say that he's going to certify the election. So in other words, he's telling you right now that he's not going to do it. He's not going to. If Donald Trump doesn't win, he's not going to do it. They're teeing up to do the same exact thing that these guys did already. He's getting himself ready to do the same thing that these guys did. Mike Waltz, is he in the list here of No, it looks like he's a new guy. Wait, let's see. No, it looks like he's a new guy. He wasn't there the last time. Was he a governor? Rep, Florida. Yeah, there's no Waltz in here. Oh well. So, well, anyways, he's saying he's going to do the same thing they did last time. He's telling you right now. That's what he's doing.
This is politically driven. It's being done deliberately in the weeks before. And I got to tell you...
yeah, I mean, I guess you could say the Supreme Court wanted to do it this way. I mean... I don't know why. I thought the Supreme Court was supposed to be not interested in politics. But like, if he wants to say that the Supreme Court that Donald Trump picked did this to hurt Donald Trump, I don't know. But he's saying so far he hasn't said that he's going to certify the election. So far, what he said is Donald Trump's been treated very badly. Like, that doesn't sound reassuring.
I got to tell you, I'm not hearing from a single constituent any concerns about this. It's the inflation, the economy, the border, crime.
So far he hasn't said that he's going to certify the election, and now he's talking about Now he's talking about like grievances that he wants to pin on the Democrats. So he's like, so can you certify the election? Well, number one, Donald Trump's been treated unfairly, and number two, Joe Biden is really messed up. Can you confirm you certified the election? Fuck Joe Biden, and Donald Trump's been treated badly. You haven't answered the question. That's the two things you've talked about right now so far.
And the world that's in chaos, and that's the reason that the Harris campaign abandoned all of this after Biden
but I'm
tried
asking
to
you
make
about
such a
looking
big deal.
forward.
But look,
I'm not asking about what voters are going to vote on.
Absolutely, we have to have a peaceful transition, and I'll point out.
So what?
Out as J.D. Vance just pointed out, President Trump had his concerns.
Well,
so far he hasn't committed to it. He said that we have to have a peaceful transfer of power, but the last one wasn't peaceful. The last time Donald Trump didn't peacefully transfer power. So why are you, as a supporter of Donald Trump, saying there will be a peaceful transfer of power when you can't even confirm that you'll certify the election? Like, it was a simple question, and you said, will you certify the election? And you said, Donald Trump's been treated badly. It's all Joe Biden's fault.
Sued them in court, but he left before January 20th. Them in court, but he left. I'll point out as JD such a big deal.
Forward.
But look,
I'm not asking about what voters are going to vote on.
Absolutely, we have to have a peaceful transition, and I'll point out, as JD Vance just pointed out, President Trump had his concerns.
Well,
he pursued them in court, but he left before January 20th on his.
Isn't that funny? Totally ignores January 6th. He totally ignores it.
Own accord. So to say otherwise,
but he also pressured his vice president to overturn the will of the voters, and
he pressured his vice president
and state
to
officials
take a view of a very vague law that has since been that the Congress since stepped in.
No, dude, it wasn't vague. Look what he did. Donald Trump tweeted this tweet after Mike Pence refused to do it. Mike Pence didn't have the courage to do what should have been done to da 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 da. So he didn't ever tell he didn't tell the writers to be peaceful and quiet. He riled them up to attack Mike Pence because Mike Pence wouldn't go along with the coup.
And clarified.
Okay, no.
But we did. The Electoral Count Act, Pam. I mean,
the
Congress
Electoral Count Act did not
in.
allow the vice president to overturn the will of the people. But really quickly, just to be clear, you will commit to a peaceful transfer of power.
That was so vague that's why the Congress stepped in.
See how he ignored the question? He's like, will you commit to a peaceful transfer of power? He's like, I'm going to talk about this instead.
And to clarify that,
because
it was
of what January 6th
law.
happened, and okay, but listen, will you commit to a peaceful transfer of power?
We've had protests. We've had protests that have.
See how he just won't answer the question. He won't just starts talking about. If you give him space, he'll talk about anything else.
Exploded into riots all over this country, including in Minneapolis, including in Portland. So I don't think you necessarily draw the causality. But at the end of the day, yes, we should have peaceful transfer of power in this country. Absolutely.
And you will certify the results if every state certifies the results.
If it is a free and fair election, absolutely.
What do you mean? Now, see that you see the qualifier? That's his that's tricky lawyer speak. If it's a free and fair election, well, unless you have proof that it's not. Why wouldn't it be, right? Do you have proof that it's not? is the next question, because he's trying to give himself an out, saying, sure, I'll certify the election if it's a free and fair election, and the only way it's a free and fair election is if Donald Trump wins. You see? Fucking tricky words.
What does that mean? What does a free and fair election mean? 2020 was a free and fair election, and members of Congress tried to overturn the results. So what does that mean to you?
Ask Hillary Clinton when she said Trump was not a legitimate president. He was selected.
No. Being a poor loser.
And by the way,
so, wait a minute. It's Congress who's supposed to ask that.
Poor loser, which Democrats have been, is different from trying to overturn the will of the people.
We talked about this, you and I, in 2021. I voted to certify. Others didn't. They had their concerns, but we worked things out in the courts, and we worked things out in debate. There should never be a riot. And at the end of the day, we had Joe Biden come in as president. So,
all right.
So Jack Smith has a political motivation, and I think that's crystal clear.
And
so... it's not Jack Smith. Jack Smith is in the Supreme Court. This should have been resolved like months ago, but Jack Smith is not the Supreme Court. He's saying that the Supreme Court has a political motivation. I think that's something interesting to look at. Why does this Republican think the Supreme Court has a political motivation?
And you have every right to make that argument. Representative Tim Walz.
So Tim Walz was not able to say that he would confirm the results of the election. He said he qualified it with, he said yes if it's a free and fair election. And what he says when he says free and fair election, what he means is if Donald Trump, as long as Donald Trump wins. It's only free and fair if Donald Trump wins. Like, they haven't proposed any legislation to address their concerns. Because it's not a real concern. They say voter ID, right? But voter ID is bullshit. You have to show ID to register to vote. Like, how do you think they confirm your signature? Like, you have to be in the registry to vote. Anyways. Man, there's so much bad stuff. Like, I gather it throughout the week, and then I don't want to, like, talk about it. There's just too much. Lol. What are you doing up there? There's just too much. I don't want to talk about it. I'm tired of it. Like, I've been saying the same thing over and over again. There's so much evidence of Donald Trump's evilness. I just don't want to, like, record it all. I don't know. I have so many slides. I just don't have the energy anymore. I've been going for an hour. Like, no one's gonna listen to this for an hour, even if you don't do it double speed. Donald Trump would deport legal Haitian workers.
Springfield is such a beautiful place. Have you seen what's happened to it? It's been overrun. You can't do that to people. They have to be removed.
So you would revoke the temporary protected status?
Absolutely. I'd revoke it, and I'd bring them back to their country.
So in other words, he's like, oh yeah, those people that are here legally, I would get rid of their legal status and then deport them anyways. So do you hear that, right? Donald Trump made up stuff about Haitian people and then said if he had power, he would deport them. He would remove their legal status and deport them anyways. Because it's not about them, because they didn't do crimes, and they're here legally, but that doesn't matter to Donald Trump, because that's not the reason why Donald Trump is getting rid of them. Donald Trump is a racist. So as a white supremacist, he's doing purges of the undesirables. It's not about crime. It's not about legal status. It's about racism. Because Donald Trump is a Nazi. And the people who follow Donald Trump are Nazis too. Here's Elon Musk jumping at Donald Trump's rally. You got two billionaires on stage. Trying to convince poor people that they're on the same team. Ah! Is anything more ridiculous than sounding than that? Two billionaires on a stage lying to poor people to convince them they're on the same team. It's just... At the debate, just to clarify, Springfield's Haitian migrants have legal status. J.D. Vance said, the rules were you guys weren't going to fact check. Because the facts, the truth kills Republicans. The truth kills fascists. Anything that can be destroyed by the truth should be. It deserves it. Anything that can be destroyed by the truth deserves to be destroyed by the truth. Fentanyl has become the #1 cause of overdose deaths in the United States. You know what I was thinking? You know a way to get around this? Because how does fentanyl suddenly kill people all over the place? Because fentanyl is basically a poison. You need very little of this poison to kill people. So it's easy to sneak into other stuff. So the problem is that people aren't buying the fentanyl, they're buying other drugs and then overdosing on fentanyl. So the idea is, why don't you make those, like, if those other drugs are impure, why don't you just legalize those other drugs? Don't market them, but just legalize them so that the supply is pure, and then people won't overdose on fentanyl anymore. Legalize and apply standards to these drugs that people are using, and they won't get bad drugs like fentanyl and overdose and die. It makes sense, right? J.D. Vance, from his web page. J.D. Vance wants to end abortion. J.D. Vance says, I am 100% pro-life and believe that abortion has turned our society into a place where we see children as an inconvenience to be thrown away rather than a blessing to be nurtured. Yeah, rah-rah. So we know J.D. Vance is a forced birther. He's anti-choice, anti-women's rights. J.D. Vance. Fuck J.D. Vance. Here's J.D. Vance repeating the lie.
Who won the 2020 election? We're going to go to town hall. Could you just answer, did Donald Trump win, yes or no?
Yes.
He did win?
Yep.
So will you concede? Will you concede? If your opponent gets more votes, will you concede?
I really feel bad for you, man.
I just want to know, if your opponent gets more votes, will you concede? Who won?
So, I feel real bad for you guys. J.D. Vance uses shame. It's not very effective. Yeah, so J.D. Vance says that he believes Donald Trump won the 2020 election, and he confirmed it. It's weird, because Donald Trump says he lost the 2020 elections.
Debates. I mean, I became president. Then the second time, I got millions more votes than I got the first time. So I was told, if I got 63 million, which is what I got the first time, you would win. You can't not win. And I got millions of more votes than that, and lost by a whisker. Debates. I mean, I became president.
He lost by a whisker. He lost. By a whisker, he lost. He says by a whisker, but he lost. And he believed it because someone told him. Not because it's true, but someone told him, and for him that's enough. So Donald Trump knows he lost the 2020 election, but J.D. Vance is repeating that Donald Trump won the 2020 election. Why? That's weird. When he was asked that at the debate, J.D. Vance couldn't answer the question. Isn't that weird? He couldn't answer. He was asked that same question at the debate, and he couldn't answer it. Oh, no. I'm done, dude. I'm done. Universal healthcare is such a complex beast that only 32 of the world's 33 developed nations have been able to make it work. Who's that one nation that can't figure out universal healthcare? Who is that one? Oh, that's right, the United States. The United States. They're the only ones who can't figure it out. I don't think it's that they can't figure it out, it's that Republicans are opposed to it. Like, white supremacy keeps getting in the way, I'm telling you. The same people trying to overthrow democracy are also preventing us from having universal health care. They're the baddies. They're the bad guys. Anyways, I'm sick of all this. I can't wait till this is over. But that's the thing. It's not going to be over. Because what's going to happen is Donald Trump is going to try to make his play for power by overthrowing the election. So it's going to get dragged out till, like, at least it's going to get dragged out. And, like, it'll be such a relief when we get to January 20th and Harris is in office. I can't wait. It's going to... Jeez Louise. Alright. Until next time, Pagokiro out. Peace. Stop.